Today, I'm going to walk you through the specs and I'm going to do a field test on the Kodak EC35, a 35mm point and shoot camera that costs less than dinner for two. And I mean that literally. This camera is $34.99. Let's see if this camera's trash, punches above its weight, or is somewhere in between. Alright, let's talk about what you're actually getting for $35. The EC35 measures at about 4.7 inches by 2.6 inches by 1.6 inches and weighs about 102 grams. To put that in perspective, that's lighter than most smartphones. Heck, it's lighter than an Instax Mini or a Polaroid Go 3. It's got a 25mm fixed focus lens at f10, a built-in flash, and unlike some other budget cameras I've tested, you can turn it on and off. So you're not stuck firing flash in broad daylight if you don't want to. That's a real point in its favor. It takes one AA battery that powers the flash, and that's it. Everything else is fully mechanical. The film advance is fully manual. You load the film, close it back, and advance the thumb wheel until it stops. Then you shoot. Then you advance it again. Very old school and very tactile, which I absolutely love. Okay, so loading this camera is pretty straightforward. You're gonna take your film, you're gonna take your camera, I just make sure your flash is off. You're gonna open the door in the back by pulling on the little tab here. It pops open. You're gonna want to, I find it easy to just press down on this little nub here to push out your rewind crank. You're gonna take your film, you're going to stick it in there. You're gonna push your rewind crank kind of back into place. And then you're just gonna take your film and pull it over. So I don't know if you guys can see, but right here it says film tip. You're just gonna bring your film kind of to the end. I like to put a little bit more. Then you close the door and I close up the lever and then I just rewind it. So there's a little arrow here and you just not rewind it, but you wind it. You should see this move as well. And it has locked in place. Now, one thing you will notice is that when the cover is closed, the shutter button does not work. So you have to open the cover and then your shutter button will work. I am just gonna take a blank photo so you guys can see how this looks. It clicked, and then you want to use your forward film wheel again, or your thumb wheel. And you should also see here, there is a number here. And it's locked in place and ready to take the next photo. So you wanna make sure that on here you get to 1 before you take your first actual photo. Otherwise, you may not actually be taking a photo. And there you go. That's how you load film for the Kodak EC35. The rewind is also manual. There's a release button on the bottom of the camera. You press it, flip out the rewind crank, and wind the film back by hand. No motor, no auto rewind. You'll know when you're done when the resistance drops and the crank spins freely. Now for a lot of you more advanced film photographers, especially if you shoot something like a Canon AE1 or Pentax K1000, this might sound too simple. No aperture control, no shutter speed control, no focus control. You're basically just pointing, composing, and deciding whether or not to use a flash. But here's the thing. If you're like me and you spend most of your time overthinking exposure, checking your light meter, second guessing your aperture, wondering if you should push or stop, there is something genuinely freeing about a camera that takes almost all of that off of your plate. Or if you're a beginner and you're intimidated by those features I just mentioned, the idea of a simple point and shoot camera sounds like a great starter film camera. The EC35 gives you exactly one creative decision: flash or no flash. That's it. You see a moment, you decide if it needs extra light, and you press a button. Is that for everyone? No. But for beginners who are nervous about wasting film, for someone who just wants to document a trip without carrying a bag full of gear around, there's a place for this camera. Now, before we get into some of the lens limitations and the actual field test results, if you're into honest film and instant camera reviews, budget gear that actually works, and learning film and instant photography without the gatekeeping, hit that subscribe button. I drop new instant and film videos every Friday, and I'd love to have you in the comments. Alright, let's talk about that lens. So, f10, fixed. No aperture blades moving, no auto exposure, just one aperture, all the time. But what does that actually mean for your photos? At f10, the aperture is relatively small. That means less light hits the film. In bright daylight, direct sun, open shade, a sunny beach, you'll probably be fine. Most consumer color film at ISO 200 or 400 can handle f10 in daylight without a problem. But the moment you move indoors, or shoot at dusk, or in a heavy shade, that small aperture can start to work against you. And this is where the flash on and off switch becomes both a blessing and a dilemma. In low light, you have two options, and neither one is perfect. Option 1, you turn the flash on. Your subject gets properly exposed, but you're getting direct on-camera flash. You can't bounce it. For subjects close to the lens, you may get that blown out during the headlights look. For subjects farther away, the flash may not even reach the subject. Option 2, turn the flash off. So now you're shooting at f10 in low light, which means your film is starving for light. Unless you're in pretty bright indoor conditions or shooting a high ISO film, you're probably going to get underexposed, muddy frames. This is the central tension of the EC35. The flash gives you control, but the f10 aperture limits what that control can actually achieve. Now, there are some upsides to the f10 as a depth of field. At f10, with a 25mm lens, almost everything from a few feet in front of you to infinity is going to be acceptably sharp. That's actually a good thing for a beginner camera. You're much less likely to get soft or out of focus shots than you would with a wider aperture, or something like an f2 or an f4. The trade-off is, you'll never really get that creamy background blur, also known as bokeh. Environmental portraits where the subject pops and the background melts away probably won't happen with this camera. Almost everything is in focus, all the time. That's both the gift and the limitation of an f10. So 25mm on a 35mm film is pretty wide. Not ultra wide, but noticeably wider than a 35mm or 50mm most people are used to. Now, there are some pros to this. First, you get a lot in the frame. For travel photography, street scenes, group shots, a 25mm lens lets you step back less and capture more. It's genuinely useful in tight spaces, crowded markets, or when you're trying to photograph a building and you can't back up any further. Second, wide-angle shots just feel a bit more immersive. They pull the viewer into the scene in a way a tighter focal length doesn't. Third, you can try some fun close-ups with wide-angle perspective shots that may not be as easy to capture with 35 or 50mm lens. Now, there are also some downsides to this lens. 25mm is not flattering for close-up portraits. If you get too close to someone's face, you're going to start to get distortion. Noses look bigger, faces stretch at the edges. This is not a camera for headshots. Also, a wider lens means smaller subjects in the frame. If you're trying to photograph something specific and isolated, a detail, a sign, a single flower, the 25mm isn't helping you. You have to get physically close. And at f10, getting close with the flash on means risking overexposure. So the lens is a double-edged sword. Great for scenes, environments, groups, travel. Not so great for detail shots, portraits, or anything where you want subject separation. If you're going to pick up this camera, here's where I think it'll give you the best results. So direct sun, open shade, a sunny afternoon in the park, this is the EC35's happy place. The f10 aperture is a non-issue in these environments. You can leave the flash off and get clean, natural exposures, and that wide 25mm lens frames landscapes and street scenes beautifully. If I were taking this on vacation, I shoot almost exclusively outdoors between like 10 and 4 p.m. As long as you're not too close, say 4 to 8 feet away, flash on helps freeze the moment and the wide lens fits everyone in. The ability to turn the flash on when you need it rather than firing it every time can be genuinely useful here. If you plan to take a lot of group photos indoors, you may want to consider getting a higher ISO film like ISO 800. The EC35 is tiny, light, and completely unintimidating. Nobody's really going to notice you shooting with this thing. If you're walking through a city on a sunny day, this camera is almost invisible, and in street photography, that's a superpower. Now, here are some scenarios where I think it will struggle. The flash will fire, but the direct flash in a dark room gives you that harsh, flat look. Backgrounds can go black, faces can get washed out if you're too close. Again, here's where you're going to want to start experimenting with higher ISO film. So at f10, there's simply not enough light. Your shots will be dark, muddy, and probably unusable unless you're right next to a window or some type of light source. This really is a no-win situation, and I wouldn't recommend shooting in this type of environment with this camera. Golden hour and dusk. So this one kind of hurts my photography heart a little bit because golden hour is where the light is most beautiful. However, at f10, ambient light starts to drop off fast. If you turn the flash on, you may lose some of that warmth, directional quality. If you leave it off, you risk underexposure. I definitely want to go out and try this type of exposure just to see if my thoughts are correct. So the 25mm lens doesn't let you get super close to small subjects, and at close range with flash on, you'll likely overexpose. And like I mentioned, if you get too close to a face, you'll start to get some distortion. Finally, night photography. Flash on, you may overexpose your subject and the background will turn out black. Flash off, everything is black. Neither one is a good look. Now these thoughts are based on shooting ISO 200 or 400 film. I tried to keep the film something that's pretty easy to find. Like I said, I am very curious how this camera will handle low light and golden hour with an ISO 800 film. So if you're interested in me testing that out, let me know in the comments below. So if I had to sum up the use of this camera, the EC35 is a daylight, outdoor, wide scene camera. Flash off outside, flash on inside, and know that indoors you're making a compromise either way. Treat it within those boundaries, and I think you'll be happy with it. Alright, now we've come to the portion of the video where I do a photo review of some of the shots I've taken. If you want to go straight to that, I'll put a timestamp on the screen and you can go there. I do want to give you all a little backstory though, just so you understand kind of how these photos came to be. So initially I wasn't going to do this video this week just because the weather has been trash and like really rainy and overcast, and I just didn't have an opportunity with work to be able to go out and shoot. Well, lo and behold, I got a little weather reprieve and I was able to see some sunlight. So I was like, screw it. I grabbed my camera, got in the car, and headed to the botanical gardens. So when I got there, it was still a little bit sprinkly and pretty overcast, but you know what? I was like, can't wait for perfection. Let's do this. So at the time I had Kodacolor 200 already loaded into the camera. I think the 400 would have been better, or just a 400 ISO film would have been better for the overcast, but 200 was what I had, so that's what I went with. I was able to get some decent shots. However, I do think the camera will perform better in brighter daylight, so I'm definitely going to do, even if I don't do a full follow-up review of like shooting in bright sunny scene, I will be doing a comparison video, and worst case I'll post some photos on both YouTube and my Patreon. Shameless plug, I do have a Patreon now, slowly getting it together. Right now I just have a free tier, but I will be developing a paid membership tier if you want to see some exclusive content. So working out all those details. But yeah, enough talking, let's get to the photos. So this is one of the first photos I took with the EC35. The overhead light is still on, and I used, the camera's flash just because it's pretty dark in this room. It wasn't like nighttime, but it definitely wasn't bright. And I think this is just a decent example of what this camera can do indoors. You're gonna have that harsh flash look because it's an on-camera flash. It's a very simple 35mm camera with an f10 aperture, so you shouldn't expect a whole lot of softness indoors with this flash. But I think it does show that you can use this like indoors for a party. I'll definitely have to do some more testing to see how the indoor flash reflects on skin and how that looks. So yes, these are the same photos. One I used with flash and one I didn't. Take a quick pause and see if you can guess which one was with the flash and which one was without. So this one right here was the photo with the flash. You can kind of tell here how it's like the flash kind of reflected off of some of the surfaces and gives you kind of this hazy look. And here you don't have that. One thing I noticed that I did with this camera was my finger kept getting into the shot. And so that's definitely something to be cognizant of. I have giant hands, so maybe that's why my finger kept getting into the shot. Also, I think it partially has to do with the fact that, like with, disposable cameras or really simple point and shoot cameras, you don't necessarily see where your hand is when you're taking a shot. However, I think because the lens is so wide here, and also just kind of how the camera is built, it can be easy to like get your finger into the shot. Also, I was shooting with one hand because it's also kind of raining, and so I had an umbrella in my left hand. I was shooting with my right, so that may also have to do with how I held the camera, and I just wasn't careful. So definitely be aware of that. So here's another kind of test that I did of one shot with the flash and one without. So you can definitely see the difference the flash makes with this camera. It was already overcast, and then this is a shaded area. So here you can at least, see the bonsai tree. You still kind of get that flash haze. Here you can't see much. You can kind of see the bonsai tree, but you can't see it nearly as clear as here. So the flash definitely does make a difference. It's definitely something that should be used if you want your subject to pop in kind of darker situations. Okay, here's another example where I tested using a flash and not using the flash, and it was a little bit sunnier, so overall I think the pictures turned out well. But on the left hand side, you can definitely see the colors look a little bit more washed out, and that was with the flash. You can also see my finger here on the right hand side in the corner of the photo, but that's neither here nor there. And then on the right hand side, you can see the photo looks a bit more vibrant to me, and that was without the flash. So here's another comparison shot I did with the flash on the left and no flash on the right. And as you can see, I have the strap in this photo. Apparently I was just not doing well with keeping stuff out of the lens, but here we are. As you can see, here's that flash haze again, and you see more detail of like the immediate trees and things of that nature. I think if I had not had this strap in the photo, it wouldn't actually be that bad. And then on the right hand side is the photo taken without the flash. Now I did bump up the exposure a bit, which is why it looks so hazy kind of around the edges. But I do like this photo in a weird kind of way. I like kind of the focus on the tree and the little waterfall here. So yeah, here's just an example of kind of what this camera can do. You can, push it some in post-processing, but you will get kind of that haze and that graying from the ISO. Okay, for this photo, so this one is about a selfie distance away, and it is a bit blurred here, so you can clearly see the flash. The colors pop a bit more from the background, but it's also pretty blurry. And again, these are kind of selfie length with my arm stretched all the way out, but you do get some blur here. So you probably want to be at least I'd say 3 feet away from your subject. I think I mentioned 4 earlier in the video, but at least 3 feet away to like get your subject in focus. And here's a selfie of my smiling face. As you can see, on the left hand side I used a flash, and on the right hand side I did not. I do feel like the left hand side looks a little bit clearer. Let's zoom in some. It's still fuzzy compared to the right, which also looks fuzzy. So again, I think you want to do at least 3 feet away from your subject to like get them in focus. But I do like how the flash doesn't like overpower my face. And again, it's not pitch black in here, so that probably helps a lot. But yeah, that's just the difference between like using a flash for the selfie and not using a flash. And then this is kind of the last set of photos I want to show you all. I just wanted to see kind of how the black showed up on the film. So left hand side, of course, you have the flash, and then the right hand side you don't. On the left hand side, you can see the black is, I don't think blown out is the right word, but it's definitely a bit more faded than the black on the right hand side. And here I was probably 3 or 4 feet away, just testing out the camera. So here's my honest take after a full roll of film. The Kodak EC35 is not a bad camera. It's a limited camera, but those are two different things. For $35 in the right conditions, daylight, outdoor, subject 4 to 10 feet away, landscapes, flash off, it can produce some genuinely usable, sometimes even charming photos. The ability to turn the flash on and off gives you real control that some budget cameras strip away. The simplicity is real. The manual advance and rewind are tactile and satisfying. Is the EC35 going to replace someone's primary camera? Probably not. Is it a fun, ultra affordable entry point for someone who's never shot film before? Absolutely. Now, here's the thing. The EC35 isn't the only budget film camera I'm going to be testing. I'm putting it head to head against the Kodak Snappic A1. That's a sub $100 camera, but with a very different philosophy. One, the EC35 is bare bones mechanical. The A1 has a bit more features and options for you to play with. Is paying the extra $65 worth it? Come back and find out. Also, are you curious how the EC35 holds up against a standard disposable camera? Let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll give it a test. If you enjoyed this camera breakdown and field test, drop a like. It helps more than you know. And tell me in the comments, is a bare bones cheap film camera enticing? Or are you willing to pay a bit more for more features? I'm genuinely curious where you all fall. Until next time, keep practicing, keep having fun, and I'll see you in the next video.